Welcome back to Life Skills Unfiltered, the podcast where we have real, honest conversations about life in the SEND community and explore practical ways to empower independence and inclusion. I'm your host, Jo Aiyathurai, and today's episode is all about symbol communication, how it can unlock potential, foster independence, and transform everyday life for those with communication needs. We're thrilled to be joined by Sue White from Widgit, a long-time advocate for symbol communication and its transformative powers. Sue joined the Widgit team in 2018 after a 16-year career as an advisory teacher with the Communication, Learning and Autism Support Service. With her experience as a SENCO in primary school and her passion for Widgit symbols and software, Sue brings a wealth of expertise to the table. In this episode, we'll explore how symbol communication can go beyond the classroom to empower independence at home, in the community and even in the workplace. What are the practical ways to integrate these tools into real life? No jargon, no fluff, just real talk and actionable advice for taking symbol communication into the real world. So let's dive in. Hi Sue, and welcome along to the podcast.
Hi Jo, it's good to be with you.
Brilliant. So can we start with the basics? So for anyone who might not be familiar with symbol supported communication, can you tell us a little bit more about what it is and why it's such an important tool for supporting individuals with communication needs?
Yeah, of course. I'm going to answer that one back to front, if I may, and talk about why we should use it and why it's so important, first of all. And basically, there are statistics from the Visual Teaching Alliance that tell us that 90% of the information transmitted to the brain is visual, and that we process visuals 60,000 times faster than spoken text. It's why you see visuals on road signs, washing labels, etc., because we process everything so much more quickly. And if you add to that that words are transitory, so once they're spoken, they disappear, but a visual or a symbol is permanent, you can see why the use of visuals to support communication is so important, because it's always there. And if we go a little bit more into brain as well, by adding a symbol to vocabulary, you're actually reducing the cognitive load on working memory. So therefore, you're increasing the capacity in short-term memory to be able to actually process and deal with a conversation or whatever it is that you need to do. So with all of those put in place, you can see why symbol-supported communication is so important. And basically what it is being able to add a visual or a symbol to vocabulary to support individuals who are perhaps pre-verbal or less able to articulate, to help them to be able to communicate. So they might point to a symbol, they might pick up a symbol and give it to a communication partner, but it means that they can actually communicate their wants, their needs, their desires, rather than being frustrated or just, not being able to give any kind of feedback. We think they're really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I think the partnership between Learn and Thrive and which was such a no-brainer for us. And thank you for you guys supporting us, because obviously those things you're talking about there around working memory and particularly around the transitory nature of language and actually how it's so much more important is a massive thing for children and young people with Down syndrome particularly. I know it's across the whole SEND community, but actually we designed the tools initially with kids with Down syndrome in mind, and that's one of the biggest things for us is actually that the issue of the working memory and actually freeing it up to be thinking about the concepts and to be thinking about the answers and not forever trying to hold on to the language, which
Absolutely.
is such a challenge for our guys. So it really worked brilliantly that having the widget symbols alongside the videos themselves, so the children and young people are kind of getting to understand and learn them. But then, like you said, actually within the activities that they then go off and do, it means we can differentiate out such a wider extent of needs and communication needs. And it's the whole show us, don't tell us approach, isn't it, for those guys that are going to be struggling with the language. So it's such an important area for us as well doing that. So I know you've
also got that, young children generally, not just those that with a learning difficulty, are visual learners up to at least the age of 7. So, it kind of makes sense. And that's around inclusivity too. What you're doing for one cohort will actually support all cohorts in the classroom, in the home, in the setting. So we see it as something that's really important, not just for accessibility for certain members of the class, but for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important, isn't it? I think a lot of people think of it as doing something different for a particular child in a class. And actually, if you just did it for everybody, then actually that would support those learners that really need it, but also the other learners as well, make it
Sure.
easier. Like I said, the road signs, all those things around us that we as adults without learning needs, that we rely on as those prompts, it totally makes sense to be
It
then
does.
using it much more broadly. So we know that you've not only been working with Learn and Thrive, but you've been working with lots of other partners to get symbol supported communication out into the community. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we mentioned there about supporting, everybody in different settings. And it's not always obvious when somebody feels excluded for whatever reason. So Widgit has actually launched its symbol friendly organisation initiative to encourage organisations to consider the hidden needs of these customers and these users. Um, so we've worked with Nottingham Trams, for example. They are providing symbolised guide to allow those of any age with a hidden disability or a literacy difficulty to travel with confidence on the tram network. So there are symbolised maps, there are guides, there's a QR code when you go to the ticket machine that takes you to the website. And it just allows for independence and allows for confidence sort of moving around the trams. We've also worked with Woburn Safari Park. Um, so they provide social stories that individuals can access prior to attending. They've got communication boards to support conversations about all the different animals. And staff will have lanyards with key vocabulary on so they can meet the needs of customers as they kind of move around the park. So they've been really exciting initiatives that we've been working on over the past few months. Yeah.
That sounds brilliant. And as a mum to someone that, uses a AAC and uses a talker because of their speech is quite so tricky, there's something really lovely about our children seeing them being part of the mainstream kind of community. So rather than her having to get out her talker and find her language and share that with me in a one-to-one, actually, we as a family or we as a group or we as a friendship group can gather around that board and then just point out the bits and bobs and the conversation we're having naturally. She's then involved in the group natural conversation
And
rather than it being a to the side one-to-one piece. And I think that would be lovely. And I think, growing up, the idea that actually trams and trains and buses and things like that could support our guys, because it makes a big difference knowing that actually the staff working with them, they can at least access those symbols so they can communicate those basic needs. It gives you a little bit of it makes you feel better about them maybe becoming more independent, a bit more
in
confident,
it,
I think.
yeah, it does. And it's all about, you say, it's all about that inclusivity. And this is the sort of thing that we want to encourage, is that this is a natural way of conversing and a natural way of sort of being a part. And we've done some work with our local district council, Warwick District Council, who've commissioned over 80 communication boards for all the green spaces in the district, so that you can go to a play park and you can see the board, and we've got instructions on those boards about how you would to use them, how you to communicate, so that peers, friends, adults, anybody can actually be using them, and everybody feels that they can express their needs and their desires. Um, I've got a little story. Can I tell you a little story
Please
about
do.
one of those boards? So, lady who went, I'm sorry, I'll just give you the quote. So she says, recently we went to a local park which has been redesigned and upgraded, and we soon spotted the Widgit communication board. My heart exploded when Jude ran over and pointed to, I want swing, please. He'd never asked when we were out before. This was such an amazing step for us. And it's like stories like that that kind of really make your heart sing when people are using them and they're making such a difference. So we want to just encourage everybody really to get symbols and think about inclusivity and accessibility for all.
And it is there's real emotional moments like that, isn't it? Where actually for a parent, that's just it sounds like such a small thing, but for those
Yeah.
where our children struggle to tell us what they need or what they want, it can be really quite emotional when they get that aspect. But it's like I said, it's that it's that community aspect, isn't it? Bringing everyone in together. So it's not something special that's just for them, but
Sure.
it's supporting everyone. And like you said, even from a point of view of maybe something I hadn't maybe necessarily considered enough is those maybe just the literacy difficulties, as well as they're getting older, where actually their communication and language might not be such an issue, but their reading and literacy, it's actually if they've got those options when they're out and about, that can really
Yeah.
support as well.
And you think about, I mean, you think about the English language. I mean, it's especially complex, but there are all sorts of other learners, there's EAL learners as well, who are trying to kind of grapple with English. And if you put a symbol alongside a word, it automatically gives you the right meaning. And if you take, for example, cell, as in a prison cell, a human cell, a cell in a PowerPoint table. If you read that word, what is it that you're actually talking about? But if you've got a symbol alongside it, then automatically you've got that comprehension. And, as an ex-teacher, it's all about if I know what I'm reading, I enjoy what I'm reading, I'm going to do more of it, I'm going to get better of it. And you get that upward cycle. So we again, say it's more than just communication. It's about that literacy and that understanding and that enjoyment of words too.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, you're a teacher with huge amounts of experience of using this, for many, many years. But for some of our listeners, they might look something they've used very much of. They might just be thinking about, should I be using it? It might be Senkos, it might be teachers in schools, but actually it might be parents at home as well thinking,
Mhm.
actually, my child could do this. How can they practically use this to build independent skills?
Um, so I think there are lots of communication boards which you can access for free on websites. The ACE Centre, in particular, has a very good website that's got lots of free communication boards on. So I think to start with, it's really good to just kind of try something out. Is to actually have a look for a communication board, have a look for some area of interest that your particular individual has, because there needs to be a reason to communicate. If I showed you a communication board that said, do you want to do the hoovering, the washing up, or the shopping, you're not going to want to communicate with me. But if I gave you a communication board that, let's say, has got chocolate, glass of wine, sit with your feet up, you would then want to make that choice. So it's got to be something that actually is going to appeal to your individual, that they're going to have a reason to communicate. And then, model. We talk about modeling all the time. You can't expect to just hand a communication board to somebody that's got a number of different choices on and expect them to know how to use it. When we're actually learning language, we hear the word daddy, for example, thousands of times before a child, a baby actually repeats that word. So you can't just give somebody a communication board, point to something and say, do you want a yogurt, and expect them to know exactly what it is that they need to do. You need to model, we sort of call it model like nobody's looking. So you're just doing it and doing it and doing it, and then you're waiting for that response. So that, I think, is the first thing, is to look at resources that are ready made and you can pick up for free. Obviously, we do sell a program that allows you to make your own resources, and the beauty of that is that you can make it personal to your particular circumstances, the vocabulary that you need, photographs that are relevant, photograph of mum, dad, grandparents, etc., carers. And then you can actually get, as I say, that makes it very, very personal. Um, I think the other thing to do is probably to have a look at things like Learn and Thrive videos, and again, websites where people are showing you what to do and talking about it. And also on our own website, widgit.com, there are lots of success stories about how communication boards and symbolized information are used, and you see the impact and the success. So I think that, that's a good way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And we use, I think, on the videos a lot within the activities. Like I said, so there's a lot of kind of sorting activities. There might be activities like even mind maps or things like that, where we're trying to talk around a concept. And actually, rather than using the written word, they can use the symbol, or
Yeah.
it be lots of other ways that they can then, show us that their knowledge. And so we're not holding them back because they haven't necessarily got those the verbal language. We're not holding them back. We're still letting them continue to learn and letting them to push on through those concepts, which is so important. I think one of the things I've found as a mum using it practically, we can, I will say we're not always the best at making sure that Bethan's talker is by her side, because it's a big old hefty thing that we have to carry around. She doesn't necessarily want to do that. So, yes, it's good for structured times where we've decided like we're going to sit down and have this conversation. But actually, when you're out and you're in your shops, or you're at home, or you're trying to do bath, or you're trying to do all those kind of practical life things, I think we have actually taken a different step now, really, and we've almost kind of stepped back to the paper and laminating approach to some of these. So for things like, the bath timetable, it's actually amazing how long a laminated piece of paper will last in a bathroom. Been amazed by the last one. It's lasted
Yes.
well. And actually gone back to the visual timetables of what her day and what her week looks like. Where actually there's been periods of change and it's been quite unsettling for her. We found that she has really, really tied back onto those, and actually then is much more settled with the transitions, but also, so little things like when you want a reward system in place, we know if you might not want to go to school today, but you need to go to school today because at the end of the day, we're doing this, or, once you've done this, we can do this. And her timetables and things give her the opportunity to link in and do that. And it's lovely that it's quite an easy thing to jump on and do now. I think before,
Yes.
where previously we spent many years, maybe 15 years ago, kind of cutting out pictures and putting things places, and it's, as a parent, hugely time consuming. And I think it's something we probably shy away from because we're like, we do it, get it all ready, but then actually is it getting used? And then I'll be then updating it and keeping it ready. Whereas actually now with the widget ones where you can just jump on and there's almost timetables ready to go, and you can just put your own symbols and your own words in there, and you can make it really work for your child. We found that practically really helpful. But also sharing resources between home and school. So another nice thing is we found that actually school can send us, a set of resources for a particular thing that she's working on, and that we can do that with her at home, and vice versa. We can tell them what they're doing at school. So it's that shared communication too.
Yeah, and that shared and that consistency between home and school using the same symbols, that's really important and really key. Yeah, no, and absolutely, I agree with you. And again, we've tried at Widgit to kind of preempt all of those things that you were mentioning. So there are templates for visual timetables, for sequences. And again, where we can, we've made pre-made resources that just need a little bit of personalization and tweaking, because we understand both as parents and teachers in the classroom about time, and that's the thing that's always lacking. So if we can make it quick and easy for you, then that obviously is the best thing. Another top tip, it is more expensive, but it might be worth thinking about something called never tear paper. You can buy it. It goes through a normal printer, but you don't need to laminate it. It has a sort of plastic coating to it, and it really is quite robust. So it's more expensive, but then you're not needing to laminate, and you're not needing the electricity. And again, you're not needing the time to stand there and cut things out twice and all the rest of it. So it might be worth a try, Jo. Bathrooms,
Right.
dribble proof, waterproof. Yeah, we recommend that quite often. But say
That
to
sounds
buy a
brilliant.
ream, you kind of go in terms of the price. But when you think about it overall, it probably does work out cheaper.
Yeah, it will definitely stop my evenings with a glass of wine sitting there just cutting things out and like chucking it back through, and then it getting slightly melted, and then having to go and reprint it again and
Reprint,
melt
yeah.
it. So that'll be
And
brilliant.
the other thing too that you can do is obviously you can view our resources online. So you don't need to print. You can once they're created, then they're sort of stored. I don't know how technical you are, but they're stored in
Yeah.
the cloud somehow, and you have a link that you can then use. So you can view them on your phone, you can view them on a tablet, you can view them when you're out and about. So you don't need to have those printed resources. You could be doing it sort of more electronically these days.
Yeah.
So
So she can have a visual, so she can have a week's timetable ready, and she can have a link and just access that directly.
absolutely.
Well, I
Yeah.
didn't know that, so you've taught me
Ah, there you
something new
go.
today. There you go. Brilliant. That
Yeah.
sounds fantastic. And I think it's just, looking at, isn't it, at all the different ways that our guys can be supported using the symbols and being creative, and almost we felt, I don't, please tell me if you think differently, that we kind of almost chosen a particular area that maybe we needed help in. So we chose wash times, because obviously
Mhm.
getting some of our children in the shower on a regular basis can be a challenge. So we chose that as a particular area, and we kind of really focused on that before we did it anywhere else. And I don't know whether you, in your experience, you find it's better to kind of use it in one particular space, or do you find it's better just to go across all activities where you can, and how that works? Or is it different children?
I think it's different children. It's different, yeah, the way that young people, children adapt and take things on board. So, yeah, I think it's, if I think obviously you've got to start somewhere. So starting somewhere where it's you can kind of work through it. But if they're taking to that quite quickly, then obviously you can introduce, more and more and more and do it across the board. Um, I mean, I guess, going back to the, would you rather have a glass of wine or do the hoovering scenario? It's about trying to do things where there is an interest and there's a desire to actually
Mhm.
see that this process works and it makes things, quicker and easier.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, well, so we wrap it up then with a bit of a fun one. So, Sue, what is your favorite widget symbol, and why does it stand out to you?
Oh, okay. So that's an interesting one. I've got colleagues who will come back to you with really good symbols, and they'll say, "Oh, I like the sensory needs, and I like the well, another colleague who likes daffodils, but mine is a Victorian bathing machine."
Oh,
So
okay, why?
yeah, so there's a story. Obviously, you asked me why. Um, when I was teaching, the Victorian topic was always one of my favourites. So it reminds me of being in the classroom and teaching my year five class. Um, but it also relates to my dad, who sadly passed away about 7 years ago. He was a channel swimmer, and I have real memories of him standing on stony beaches getting changed. He used to swim, this is years ago before wild swimming was a thing, but so he swam through the whole year training, and he would stand on these beaches in an old curtain basically that had a kind of drawstring at the top, and he'd always be falling over while he was trying to get changed. And I used to think, well, if only you had a Victorian bathing machine, and you could walk up the steps on one side and then come out the other side into the sea, life would be so much easier. So that is why, and you'll see it on the back of my t-shirts, and people are always looking at it and thinking, oh, that's an odd one, but that is why a Victorian bathing machine is my favourite symbol.
Oh, brilliant. That's a great communication starter too. I tell you what, I'm quite up for a Victorian bathing machine. I quite like the idea of being able to kind of go in, get changed at your own leisure, and then waft, rather than doing that dance with your towel on the beach, trying to get yourself sorted.
Absolutely. Yeah, they
Sounds like
certainly
a
got
much
it
better
right, didn't they? I
idea.
mean, obviously the reasons were very, very different in terms of not
Mm.
showing your ankles, but it certainly seemed a very civilized way to do things.
Absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming along, Sue. And we really appreciate your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.